And now, the moral center of the Daily Mojo, Dan Andros.
We took a long trip back to the moral center after the last segment.
Hey,
We didn't do this. Was back in Turkey in 11,000 years ago. What they had with statues back then and their junk,
What it
I don't
shows,
know.
what it shows is that we never change.
No,
That's
that's
a
true.
fact.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
They
And
just
it's
they didn't have only fans; they had only rocks. So they did what
only
they did.
rocks. Yep.
Wow, that was. See what you did there. Then I won't even go into the other story that I had on the 10 phallic flora and fauna that look just like male junk. We'll save that for a later date.
Yeah.
But it is. It's like there's a starfish that looks just like it. It's kind of weird. It's almost like God is a comedian playing to an audience afraid to laugh. All right, so the world is continues to be like whacked out, screwed up, and where do you want to start?
Well, we didn't talk last week, right? So we haven't talked since the war broke out.
We did, didn't we?
Did we?
Didn't we? I can't remember. It must have been a
weren't you out
memorable
last week?
conversation. Maybe we didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe we did.
In any event.
I don't know.
All right. So yeah, what everything that's happening right now in Israel and in the Gaza Strip. What do you see happening here?
Well, I see. Oh, you mean like going forward?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's pretty dicey because of Iran kind of looming in. And, look, when you smell weakness in the water, that's when bad things happen. And I think that's what the globe is smelling right now. They're smelling weakness in the water, and they're all positioning now. And so they're not afraid. They're not afraid of American deterrence. You don't have the crazy man who might just press the button at the helm anymore. And so from their point of view, right, like they're like, he might just do it.
Right.
They don't have that anymore. Right. And I mean, Reagan was that way. I mean, most presidents have been that way. You could make a small argument for even Bill Clinton and Obama were willing to do strikes of some sort and, as retribution. And you just don't get that sense right now. And I think you see China's positioning. Iran is certainly not worried about anything, right? I mean, they've got to be feeling very good because not only are they not getting reprimanded or sanctions or anything like that, they're getting billions of dollars unlocked for them. So they're like, this is great. We can help fund terror attacks against Israel and we get paid for it. Awesome. So there's no deterrent right now. And I think that's just going to lead to trouble.
It's really scary because you're right. There's just no one's afraid of what could possibly happen here. And I don't know what happens next. No idea.
Well, it's like we're living sort of our own version of It's a Wonderful Life. And instead of, George Bailey, getting to see what the world would be like without him, we're kind of getting to see what the world would be like without America as the primary force on the planet that's kind of keeping things in line, right? And I know people like to complain and say, we shouldn't be getting involved in all these other things. And I feel like there's a balance there. I don't think this is a zero-sum game. I don't think it's get out of everything. I think there's a point where we're doing too much. But America definitely is the glue that holds a lot of the chaos together. And if you don't try to balance that, at least somewhat, eventually these foreign wars that we try to just ignore and go la 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 and sit in our own little island here in North America and hope that doesn't come to our shore. Like, it's going to affect us at some point if we just let it all rage. So you have to get involved, at least in my opinion, at some level, right? And we can argue to the extent where maybe we're doing too much. We got to pull back a little bit. I don't think makes much sense to just be like, we just get out of everything and just live and let live and hope for the best. I don't think that's a wise way to go. But
maybe
anyway,
you get
I think
involved before maybe you get involved before the guns start getting fired.
Yeah.
Before the bombs start dropping.
Sure.
I mean, maybe you get in there and I hate to say it,
diplomacy.
but Trump was in there. No wars started
Abraham
during
Accords.
Trump's.
No. And I think that's
seemed like it kind of worked.
That's multiple reasons. One, they knew he meant business, that he was capable of doing something crazy, right? Like from their view, like that maybe a wussy politician wouldn't do. They wouldn't have the cojones to, push the envelope. I mean, Trump put the embassy in Jerusalem, which every other president said they were going to do and then didn't do it because they lacked the political will to do it. Trump doesn't care about that stuff, right? So for all of his flaws, the good thing about him is he doesn't care. Like he'll do something if he really wants to do it, and he won't sit there and go, the liberals won't like me on this. Like that's not him. And so, when he's in there, it's a whole different ball game. You didn't see all these wars starting. Biden comes in and he's sucking on Werther's originals and walking around on the beach and struggling to get a couple sentences together. And all the other countries are going, maybe now's our time. Let's go ahead. Let's try to take some land back in Ukraine. China's over there going, look at that. Taiwan's looking sexy today. And then now you have Iran saying, you know what? Maybe it is time to ramp up and do a massive attack on Israel. Like, it's certainly not good.
And here we are.
Yeah.
And I don't know the latest. I'm not sure. Have we told? Has Biden and the administration told Israel to hold back on major operations? I know they've gone in and started their search for Hamas, but are they holding back? Do you know? I mean, it seems like we're not really sure exactly what's going on at this point.
I would be disappointed if that was true, because I saw that report the other day. I think it was yesterday or the day before, and they asked him. A reporter asked him, "Are you trying to delay this? For whatever reason?" And he said, "Yes, we're talking to them." And then the administration walked that back and said, well, he didn't hear the question right. He just heard, are we working to get the hostages back? And that may very well be true. I don't know. But I would not be surprised, because imagine the pressure that Biden's getting from the progressive left right now, who have no problem. They have no ounce of shame in going over the top for Palestine's cause right now. Not at all worried about being lumped in with actual terrorists, and zero concern in the world on that. So that's one faction of the political left that you have. They have to be. I mean, look at the protests that are popping up. That is what the left caters to, right? Is that academia land who are pushing these youngsters out to protest and go, yes, Palestine. Like, could you imagine, even if, let's just say the plight of the innocent Palestinians, right? There are innocent Palestinians caught in the middle of this. Absolutely true. But imagine the timing after Israel suffers this horrible, horrible atrocity at the hands of evil. And your first instinct is to leap out and start yelling about the Palestinian cause. Like, it's just insensitive. I mean, I don't really know a better word off the top of my head, but it's just, pick a better time, right? Like, it's too soon. Like, how about you just, what are you yelling about Palestinians for at this moment in time when a bunch of Israeli innocents just got slaughtered in the most gruesome? They're releasing old ladies. They kidnapped old ladies and kids. Like, what in the world? And then you're out there going, yay. Like, and even if your cause is legitimate, it just looks terrible right now. It just looks awful. It looks like you're siding with Hamas. Really bad. But they don't care. But my point in bringing that up, though, Brad, is just that to land the plane here is that that's the mentality that Biden's getting behind the scenes. So I would not be surprised at all if he's trying to delay it. They're all calling for ceasefires. Like, if someone comes up and punches you in the face, it's basically like you're sitting there reading a book on the sidewalk on a bench, and somebody comes up and punches you in the face, And then you turn
Right.
around and stand up and be like, what's that? And then everyone comes up and is like, hey, sit down, pal. And you're like, oh, I just got hit in the face. And then you sit down and then they hit you again and you turn around and they're like, stop it. You stop. Like, no, I'm the one getting hit here.
It's crazy. And then we see, the aid, which again, people need help in that area. And the problem that we're now facing is the fact that we gave it all away. We've given money and goods and supplies to Ukraine. So we've got, I don't know where we're getting any of the stuff that we're giving away now. And I don't know if you heard this, but the guy, I think he's in the State Department. This was last week or on Friday, may have been Saturday. Anyway, this is the explanation of how we're going to be sure that all of the aid that we're giving to the Palestinian folks is going to get through and past Hamas. And the answer, this guy's answer is just, it's stunning, but I don't know if you've heard this.
The United States going to ensure that none of that ends up in the hands of Hamas?
Well, as you know, this was a primary focus of the president's diplomacy yesterday, both in Israel, where he met with the entire Israeli security establishment, but also in his phone conversations with regional leaders, including President al-Sisi of Egypt. Getting assistance into Gaza is a complicated undertaking. It involves essentially securing an understanding among Hamas fighters who control the checkpoint on the other side of the border, among the government of Israel and among the government of Egypt. And the agreement the president secured will enable these trucks to flow as soon as the roadway can be repaired. But the president was also quite clear that if this assistance goes in, it cannot be misappropriated, cannot be taken by Hamas fighters for their own purposes. And so we're going to be watching that very closely. It has to get to Palestinian civilians who need it.
It has to. But the question is, from what you just said, is the U.S. then essentially in a position where it has to take the word of Hamas that it will not be taken? I mean, what other guarantee can there be?
We believe there is an understanding now among all of the players who control that crossing, the Rafah crossing in Egypt.
I know, it's crazy. It's like, did we not learn anything
We
from
believe there's an
Afghanistan?
understanding. We believe there's an understanding. So you're taking Hamas's word for it is essentially what he's saying. He didn't say that we're going to have other teams in there, UN peacekeepers going in and verifying this on the ground. He just said, we think we have an understanding. Like, the Hamas guys were like, we'll get it over there. I mean, it's just absurd.
It's like a replay of Afghanistan and the Taliban. Remember, we have an agreement with the Taliban. They're going to start treating people nice, and they're not going to be a bunch of jerks anymore. So, we're confident that everything's good.
It's just unbelievable. And then they sit there and say that there's this. It's unbelievable. I mean, they're saying, hey, there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza right now being caused by Israel. Of course, it's the general tenor of the press. But they don't have fuel. They don't have water. But then rockets are still flying over there. I don't know if anyone's noticed this. Our reporter, Chuck Holton, is, for anybody who wants to see great updates, he's been doing that on our YouTube channel, CBN News YouTube channel. And he's been providing updates. And he was in Ashkelon, I believe is how you pronounce it. But it's right outside of Gaza. And he's just filming, and there's just this big rocket barrage going on from Gaza, and Iron Dome's intercepting him over his head.
Right.
And you're just like, wait a minute, you guys can't get food, but you're able to still shoot rockets around. Something's not adding up here. Clearly, these guys are just awful, and they're evil. I don't know why you'd believe anything they say at this point, but this is that weakness, right? Like, this is an administration that just doesn't know what to do. And doesn't know how to be firm, and doesn't know. And look, I'm not an expert in that area. I'm not saying I have all the answers on how you would handle that situation at the border, but I do know a weak response when I see one, and that was it.
Yeah, no doubt. And the whole thing, I mean, nobody wants to see people getting killed. That's the bottom line. It's obvious that we can't all just get along. That's never going to happen. But I don't know what you do.
The debate and the moral equivalency is insulting, really. If you're not just blaming Hamas for all of this, whatever collateral damage there is because of Israeli airstrikes, if you have any shred of just like blaming it on Israel, essentially, and telling Israel we need a ceasefire, you're an idiot. Like, you are an idiot, and you're gullible and a fool. Israel has to respond to this. Hamas very clearly needs to be the ones wiped off the face of the earth. They're the ones oppressing the Palestinian people, not Israel. Hamas has had control of Gaza for a decade and a half now, maybe more. And they're the ones at fault here, and anything that happens is on their heads. And if you try to spin that any other way, you're just wrong.
How do you do that, though? How do you eliminate Hamas? Isn't that kind of like the war on terror? I mean, we didn't know where to go back in '01. It's like, where do you go? There's not like Hamas is like, they don't have a 5-story building, which is their headquarters. What do you do?
Well, the difference here is that Hamas is actually in control, as far as politically speaking, of Gaza. And so that you can definitely remove all of their leaders and the public politicians who are actually in control. You can remove the government. Now, that should be relative. I mean, they're already taking out multiple high-level ranking, Hamas officials, government officials. But you're right. You're not going to eliminate the tens of thousands of terrorists. You're going to kill a lot of them, but they're like ants. They're going to come back. But all you can do is, all you can do is get this thing on a path forward to put in a legitimate government as best you can, and then work from there. But it just seems like the Middle East, they're just bent on terrorism, and you're going to have so many of these little ants that keep coming back up. It's the fear, of course, is it's just going to be like Afghanistan, and you keep having the Taliban just creep up and keep taking over, and they'll always be there. And so it's tough.
That's what's been happening in the Middle East now for as long as I can remember. I mean, being a kid, I remember the news stories in the 70s about, peace in the Middle East and all of the wars and everything. So it's never, in my eyes, it's never really ended. And I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know. I just know it seems crazy, the all of the division that this has sown in this country. That's the wildest part to me. And I guess maybe even back then in the 70s, you had some people who were, pro PLO, I guess, but it just never seemed as wackadoodle as it does today.
Well, I mean,
maybe that's me.
No, it's not just you, because the problem is, I just saw a poll that showed, it asked the question, was the attack on Israel, can you justify it by, Palestinian oppression? Does any oppression that the Palestinians suffer justify these attacks on there? And young people, it was like 18 to 24-year-olds were like 51% said yes. And I'm just like, I don't, that to me is such deep indoctrination at the probably college. Those are college age kids. So the indoctrination at that level has to be massive for you to get to that place to where you're either ignoring or just not seeing the evil that, I don't know if you've watched any of this GoPro footage that's starting to come out, but it's just, it's unspeakable stuff.
I have not.
They're starting to release, they haven't released all of it. You see people talking about it, but the Hamas fighters were wearing GoPros, and they're calling their parents back home, bragging that they killed 10. They're heroes now. Your son's a hero because I killed 10 Jews. Just the hatred that they're filled with, and for whatever reason, it always goes back to this oppressed and oppressor mentality, and that's what the far left fixates on. And they put the Palestinians in that oppressor class, or the oppressed class by the oppressor, and they just blame Israel as the oppressor. So it's really a corrupt worldview. It's the white versus brown.
Yeah, it's the white versus brown. They were able to just look at that, and because of everything that's happened in this country, and white man bad, white Christian man bad, it's like the pilot in was it Alaska Air? I hadn't even thought about this until one listener, Wade Robertson, says, look, he's going to be a white male Christian extremist. He's the guy who tried to take down the plane. That's what they're going to frame him as, a white male Christian extremist, proving that he's the biggest threat in this country. And so it just turns out to be white people against brown people. I had somebody say that to me on Threads. That's the whole problem with Israel. White people hate brown people. They've been able to dumb it down to that.
Yeah, which is comical, by the way. The whole thing is ridiculous on its face because Israel is a tiny little state in there surrounded by massive nations who hate it and want to kill it.
Right.
And somehow they're the ones oppressing everyone else. It's like, okay, no.
I don't get it.
Nice
I really
there,
don't.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Well, let's end on something positive. Let's talk about what you're going to be talking about on the Quickstart podcast today.
Well, we talked about how the media is so corrupt, and the New York Times with the Gaza hospital story. I'm sure you guys followed that, but they actually walked it back and they issued an editor's note, and we went through that whole thing, and it is remarkable. And so my positive uplifting note to you is we discuss how utterly bankrupt the media is when the biggest paper on the planet can't make a basic fact check and frame a story in a basic way to understand that, hey, maybe the terrorists are lying to us and we shouldn't just take their word for it. But yeah, so we also talked to Ray Comfort, who's always great to talk to, the evangelist, and he talks about how we should be looking at the things happening in the Middle East and use it for evangelism, as he always so expertly does. So,
the First Amendment.
Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do.
Lives here. Watch and listen at thedailymojo.com.